Oh dear. Well, I'm going to make a video about those two computers. But it looks like there's some crap in the way. That's going to need to get out of the way before I can do this. Now that is more like it. So, how about we get on with the video, shall we? Now, I don't know about you, but even though it's still a mess, obviously, I'd say that's a resounding improvement from what it was before. But, let's get on with today's video of these two machines. Now, it's worthy to note that I'm going to just be comparing these two machines based on feature set and what they look like. But what they would have looked like when they were brand new. Obviously, the two conditions of these two machines do not compare at all. This one's in immaculate condition, this one is not. We'll just say that. But anyway, so let's start with an overview of the Versa 6230, which is what this is. So we can see that, well, the NEC logo is on the top here. We have a power light right about there, and also a battery light. So if it had a battery that was chargeable installed, it would be charged. That light would come on, probably orange to indicate that it's charging. Designed for Microsoft Windows NT or Windows 95. So this is a newer machine than would that one be. This one probably would have shipped with Windows 95. And I believe the drivers that you can download from NEC's website are for Windows 95 only. But I haven't looked. I do have the recovery media for this one, so that's what I use. If we take a look at the front, we can see that it's about an even thickness, give or take a little bit, between the top and the bottom pan, or like the top pan and the bezel of the display housing. This is what the latch looks like. It's a slide latch. That's what the spacing between these two parts looks like, because this is not unibody. This isn't an Apple product, and unibody didn't even exist back then, even from Apple. So there we have that. We have a microphone right there, CD-ROM drive, which could be a floppy, and an infrared port, and that's how big the infrared is. Take a look over at this side. We have a door right here, which I believe is either for the battery or the hard drive. No, that's for the hard drive. We have a blanking plate right here that would have been for a modem. We have another blanking plate for something else. I don't know what would have gone there. Kensington lock, cooling fan, a flip-down door with a USB port on it, and also a composite video out. And, of course, port for the power brick. Oh yeah, and if I didn't mention it before, that's what the hinges look like. On the back, underneath this door, there are a lot of doors here. That's what machines from the 90s would have been like. There were doors everywhere. Nowadays, that's not the case. PS2, mouse and keyboard. It's a combined port. And 25-pin parallel for printers. And I believe there were parallel port modems. Actually, no, parallel port modems probably didn't exist. Right here, this is probably going to be the most difficult one to get off. There's the port for the docking station, which I don't have, unfortunately. I've never seen one. And underneath this door, we have the 15-pin, or the HD15 connector for VGA or XGA or whatever your standard happens to be. It's actually not appropriate to call that VGA connector because obviously VGA is a video standard and not a video connector. Just if you want to get technical about it. Most people call it VGA anyway, and I tend to do that as well. But anyway, moving right along, we've got 9-pin serial. No 25-pin serial on this laptop, but 25-pin serial was something that they were trying to get rid of at that point. Right here, there should be a door covering up the PCMCIA slots. There are 2 of them. So it would fit 2 Type 2 or 1 Type 3 card. And is there a door there? No, there's no door there. But we have the slider for the volume, and we've got all of the inputs and outputs for the audio. I believe there's a line input and a line... Yeah, there's a line in and a line out, as well as headphone and microphone. Alright, so that's pretty much an overview of the machine. If you want to look at the power brick, this is what it looks like. The brick for the other one is basically identical. I have that brick too, but the brick for that one actually has an NEC logo on it. And the brick for that one doesn't actually even work, if you've seen my video about that machine. It's an ADP74 brick. Outputs 18.5 volts, either 0.75 amps / 1.7 amps split, or 2.45 amps / 0 amps split. I have no idea exactly what that means, but at maximum, you're basically really pulling, well, for the whole thing, you're really pulling 2.45 amps at, well, absolute maximum. So, where does that leave us? That leaves us with looking at the internals. So let us do that. I need 2 hands to open up the machine. Alright. So let's see here. What have we got? Well, we have probably one of the first trackpads you'd ever see on a laptop. There's no other pointing device. You have to use the trackpad unless you want to use an external mouse. And there were external mice made, including that right there. Logitech Trackman trackball mouse. That was portable. Anyway. The keyboard is pretty nice to type on. It's got a solid feel to it. It is a rubber dome keyboard, but it's not like those chiclet stupid things that they have now. We've got 2 speakers, so it is stereo. There's a speaker here and a speaker there. Intel Pentium. This is powered. This particular one is a 6230. So it is powered by a 233 megahertz Intel Pentium processor with MMX technology. Can't forget that. That was a big thing back then. Of course, the camera won't focus on it, but yeah, you get the idea. I believe it has 128 megabytes of memory, but I can check that when I power it up. It has a 40 gigabyte hard drive in it, but that's not what it would have come with. It would have come with, I believe, a 6 gig drive. When it would have been new. Yeah, 6 gig would have made sense. Maybe it was a 4 gig, I don't know. But it definitely wasn't 40 gigabytes. In fact, this thing needs geometry translation for anything over 8 gigabytes, so there we have that. The keyboard layout is pretty reminiscent to a Toshiba. In fact, if I get my Toshiba out here. Alright, so here we have my Portage 7020 CT, and as we can see, the layouts are almost the same. There are a few more function keys for the NEC, and plus, there is a Windows key on this NEC. And this layout on this Toshiba is a little bit more compact than the layout on the NEC. The other things that we can see here are a power switch, which is a slide switch, and a sleep button, or actually more accurately, that's a suspend button. We can also see the display close switch right there. Fairly common for those days. Also fairly common for those days, something you will not see today, a status LCD panel. Instead of having hundreds of thousands of LEDs on the front of the display, it uses a status LCD. That was a very common feature back in the 90s, especially on business-grade machines like this. And it's kind of unfortunate that these aren't around anymore, because there are no LEDs to burn out, and it should always work as long as that display doesn't get cracked and the display doesn't age, which it will age. Eventually these will fail because everything fails. The other thing that we have here is a slider switch for the brightness. You definitely won't see a hardware slider switch for brightness anymore. And speaking of display, this thing has a 1024 by 768 maximum resolution, TFT color display, so it's an active matrix. Would have been fairly expensive even back then. Most machines, if they were cheap machines, would have had dual scan passive matrix displays, which look like crap, especially if they're the color ones, because the color ones are terrible. I have a PowerBook 520C with a DSTN color display. Oh, it looks awful. I used to have a Toshiba that had a DSTN display as well. That was just, you know what? No, not even going to get into it. It's too bad to think about. Alright, so let's power the machine up and take a look at its startup process. Hear the hard drive spin up. See the display initialize. We're going to press F2 to get into setup. And we can see the AMI BIOS High Flex setup utility. This is not the Win BIOS. Although, I'd assume that this probably would have been in and around the time of the Win BIOS, but though I think the Win BIOS looks pretty pretentious, so I'm glad that it's in this. But you can also, if you really wanted to, you can change the color of this particular BIOS. I don't know why you would want to do that, but, you know, whatever. It's a feature that's there. The date and time is miraculously still correct. Is it? Yeah, it's about 1:25, so it's a couple minutes off. We have 128 megabytes of memory. As you can see, it's detecting only 80 gigabytes because we're maxing out the CHS parameters. I do actually have, oh, what the hell is it called? Drive overlay software installed. It's on track, which would have been applicable to Hitachi drives, which is what's installed. So this is a pretty standard BIOS. There's not a whole lot that you can really, well, there. Anyway, okay, all right. Let's get out of this and boot the system up. So we can see the on-track overlay software. And we're booting into Windows 95, which is the factory build. Well, not quite. It's the build from the factory image. The factory recovery CDs. So there we can hear the speakers in action. And the trackpad in action. There's not really a whole lot that I can really demonstrate here. Let's choose, how about blue diagonal? Looks fairly nice. Of course, I believe this is in, I don't know what color mode this is in. I should probably take a look at that. It has a Neomagic Magic Graph 128 XD, and yes, I just read that right from there. Graphics processor in it. Oh, we're only in 256 color mode. I guess it really only supports 256 at a high resolution like this. If I were to change it down to true color, it would go down to 800 by 600. Oh, it supports high color. Let's see what this does. Yeah, I want to keep those settings because that looks better. Oh my god. Yeah, that's looking great. I don't think that's what that's supposed to look like. Yeah, that actually looks worse. Do they all look like that? Well, that's open. I wanted to know. Let's try picking another one, contemporary. Yeah, that looks fine. So I don't know what the deal is with that. Anyway, so there you pretty much have it. Let's just go ahead and actually let's demonstrate the sleep functionality. If we press the sleep button or the suspend button, see, it beeps at us from the system speaker. We get a moon icon and the light blinks. If we press it again, it wakes up out of sleep mode. I don't know what that little tap indicator means. I never actually figured that out. We can hear the speakers pop too. Brightness control works. Brightness is pretty good on this particular display as well. So let's shut this thing down. Or actually, if we depress this switch, I believe the only thing that does is turn the display off. Yeah, that's about the only thing that it does. So let's go ahead and shut this off now. Alright, so there you basically have the 6230. Let's move on to the next one. And here are the two power bricks side by side. This is the brick for the 6030. This is the brick for the 6230. If we look at them right here, you can see one of them has an NEC logo on it. I believe the other one should have had an NEC logo on it, but doesn't anymore. They're a slightly different color gray. Yes, they're a slightly different color gray. Don't know if you can... Yeah, you can see that on camera. They are a tough different color gray. This one, obviously, doesn't really work, but it's the same connector, or thereabouts. If we flip them around, I believe they're the same model. ADP74 is what both of them are. This one has a little bit of a different output specification, but I'd assume that it's probably the same since this power brick can power both machines. Made in Korea. Well, both of them are made in Korea, so that's not very much of it. I believe Sanken made this particular brick, because it says Sanken on it. Not sure who would have made this one. Or if it even says on it. It just says NEC Corporation. But they're slightly different, so there's an age difference between the two bricks. That's pretty much all that's different about them. Alright, so now let's take a look at this machine. So as you can see from the, if we compare the two tops, there is no design for Windows whatever the heck sticker on it. The hinges are a little bit different. It's the same general design, but you can see that the spacing between them is a little bit different from the spacing on there. This is a more even appearance. This is, well, not. The other change that we can see is that the power light is no longer on the actual display bezel itself, rather it's on the system chassis. And the final change that we can take a look at from the top is the fact that the NEC logo has been moved down further, and it's also smaller. So compare and contrast the 6230 with this, which is the 6030X. That's what this is. So it's a little bit older, probably not a whole heck of a lot, considering the design is almost the same, not quite. Something like this probably would have shipped with Windows 3.1 initially. In terms of hardware differences, this is powered by a 133 megahertz power PC. Intel Pentium processor. I think it's with MMX. It's not a 486, but it's certainly an earlier Pentium. It's not one of the more modern Pentiums like that would have had. I still don't know how much memory it has. Actually, I do. This thing has 16 megabytes of memory installed, which is a lot less than the 128 that this one has. I don't even think that would have come with 128 when it was new, but maybe it was ordered with 128. All I know is that this one has 16 in it as compared to that. It has the original hard drive, which is a 1.2 gigabyte. I believe I can figure that out for you when I power the machine on. In terms of differences, we can see that the latch is bigger and no longer slides, or doesn't slide. Instead, you pull up on it. The bottom, or the top pan, is actually thicker in terms of thickness. It's not really thicker, it's just the lip is bigger than that of the bezel. And we have more of an even look to these two pieces here. We don't have a microphone on the front. The CD-ROM drive is slightly different. And again, this could be swapped for a floppy drive. And the infrared sensor is a little bit smaller than the IR on this machine. Alright. So ignoring the total destruction on the side of this machine, this right here, I can't read that symbol. I believe it's a modem, or some kind of a modem anyway. But that's the connector for it. I have no idea what it is. There used to be a Kensington lock right there, but there is no longer a Kensington lock right there. We have, instead of the slider wheel being on the other side, it's right here. And the outputs, and inputs and outputs for audio are right there as well, as is the power button. Yes, this is every bit as destroyed as it looks. Alright, what do we have on the back? Let's take a look. So the layout is pretty much the same on the back as it is on the other one, the 6230. We've got the PS2 keyboard and mouse combined, 25-pin parallel, docking station, HD 15, and 9-pin serial. On this side, the door for the PCMCIA cards is intact. Again, there are 2 of them. I believe they're even card bus capable on this model too. And this door goes to the battery. There's a lock right there. I don't know what that means. If we go ahead and open up the machine, you can see the latch in operation. We can see that we still have the same trackpad. Pretty much the same layout, although it's more like the Toshiba. We don't have the Windows key on this one. Predates that. Which is why I think that this was a Windows 3.1 machine when it was brand new, because most Windows 95 machines would have shipped with a Windows key. We have a spacer here, and these larger style arrow keys are put into the keyboard for a more compact layout. You can see that the microphone has actually moved to right here. We still have the sleep switch. This is actually supposed to be a slider switch for the power, but the switch is missing. The LCD is pretty much, the status LCD is pretty much the same. We have the Versa 6030X in a slightly different font. There's the power light / charging light. We still have a 1024x768 color display. This one's a little bit better. It has a, it actually has, I believe it's 64K capable. I don't know if that's high color or what bit level that is, but I don't know. Maybe it's not better at all and I'm just an idiot. The slider switch is now on the side of the display, and we have an Intel Pentium inside. So that's the older Pentium logo. Alright, so let's go ahead and power this up if I can find my little thing. Powering it up is going to require the use of tools. Do not try this at home. I am a professional idiot. Oh, you know what generally helps? Taking the power cord and plugging it in. Since this machine doesn't actually have its functional power cord, I can't use that. I'm thinking of maybe fixing it up. But fixing that other power brick is going to require a lot of love. So let's try that again. There we go. You hear the hard drive. You should see chips and technologies show up. The display is also a little bit more glossy. Press F2 for BIOS setup. This uses a different BIOS. That is the high brightness, by the way. This display is just old. We can see, instead of a AMI BIOS, we have a Phoenix BIOS. This is actually Note BIOS 4.0. The date and time is actually even more accurate on this one than it is on the other one, which is interesting. 1.4 gigabytes in size is the hard drive. It seems to think that there's a floppy installed. I can't disable that. I don't know what the deal is. But you can see we've got 640K of conventional system memory, that's the usual, and about 16 megabytes of extended memory. A little bit under 16 megabytes of extended memory because it's got 16 installed. So, configuration is about the same. Oh yeah, the other thing that I want to point out, the speakers are actually in the display, and this one has a broken left speaker, so as you can probably tell. If you hit it the right way, it starts making noises like that. So I'd assume that the connector is coming loose or something like that. So you can exit and discard changes. I don't believe it reboots. No, it does. You can see chips and technology. 65550 is what this is based off of, and the BIOS flash is a little bit different as well. It takes up the full screen, unlike the other one, which doesn't. the beep is also slightly lower pitched. And that's a little bit different. 133 megahertz. This should boot straight up into Windows 3.1. So if you want to compare boot times, you can. And yes, the display driver is installed, as is the speaker driver. I can actually move this around. I believe I have it set in 64K mode. Yep, 64K small fonts, chip 65550. That's what this is. Alright, so I don't have a whole lot installed on here. In fact, I have nothing installed on here yet. That will soon change, though. We can play a game of solitaire, if we really want to. I mean, I'm not going to make it a long game of solitaire, but... These older trackpads are not really all that easy to use. For those that are wondering... Oh, I didn't even realize that I had that there. Oops. Oh well. I think that's the last move that I can do. I'm never really good at this game. Well, I can play it, but I understand it. That's pretty much it. It's actually probably one of my better games, to be perfectly honest with you. Damn it. Anyway, I think you get the idea. There's also Minesweeper, which I'm terrible at. There aren't a whole lot of things in terms of files. There is some of the Chips and Technologies drivers. Even though this background doesn't actually scale, I might make a version of this background that runs with 1024 by 768. The one thing that's missing on this laptop is USB. This thing has no USB support on it. Which is, again, why I think that it probably was a Windows 3.1 machine or a very, very early Windows 95 machine. Because initially, Windows 95 didn't have USB support, but later versions did. So something like this would have been a later Windows 95 machine back when OSR2 was released, which would have had USB support. The other thing that I noticed on this machine is that I think there are two infrareds. So there's an infrared back there as well. Shut up, you stupid speaker. So let's operate the sleep switch again. See, it beeps, and it does the same thing that the other one does. We press it again. Comes out of sleep mode. And that's pretty much it, I think. I have no display. Did I lock it up? I think there is a reset switch on this somewhere. Or we could just pull the power. Restart it. Where's my... There it is. Okay, good, the machine does still function. I think that might have been a byproduct of my having put it to sleep. It just suddenly stopped working. Because this is an older version of Windows, so it might have a tendency to do that. Still looks like it might boot. Alright, there we go. So now we can exit out of Windows, which is what I wanted to do to begin with. And we get out to a DOS prompt. See that? Can see that it's configured for about 1440 bytes total, so that's 1.4 gigabytes. Because 1 gigabyte is about 1 billion bytes. So that's about how it works. We're using I don't even know. I can't calculate that. There's too much damn crap here. 294,000 bytes? I assume that there's probably more than that. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. To shut a machine down like this, you have to use the power switch. So we're going to do just that. This actually isn't the tool that I had before, but that's what we're going to do. So there you go. There's a comparison between these two machines. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. And this is CP666 signing off. I hope to see you next time. Till then. Alright, just one more thing before I leave. Just like Steve Jobs. Yeah, that was terrible. Anyways, one more thing before I decide to leave and finish editing this video. I wanted to do a startup comparison between these two. Boot times, shutdown times, compare all that stuff, even though there's like, actually I can't really compare shutdown times because that's not a feature in Windows 3.1, but still. I can't do them side by side since I only have one power brick, and it's not really going to be a fair comparison at all because it's Windows 95 versus Windows 3.1, but I am going to just go ahead and do it anyway because this machine probably would have shipped with Windows 3.1, or Windows 3.1 would have been an option when this was brand new. Maybe it was a 95 machine when it was new, I don't know. But, let's just go ahead and do this, because you know what? It's my video, damn it. I'll do whatever I want. So let's start here. Alright, stop. So that's how fast it is to start up. Actually, I think I'll do it at the beginning of the startup sound, because that's more fair, since the startup sound for this machine is shorter. It's not really fair to count the startup time, because you can still do work even if it's playing the startup sound. Anyway, let's just shut it off and move on to the next one. And now for the 6030X. So you can't really see the display. And, well, there basically you go. That was a lot faster. So that goes to show you that newer is not necessarily better in terms of, well, speed. So now we can go ahead and shut this down, and I can sign off for good, finish editing this video, and, well, basically, there you go.